Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.
Welcome to Gamespot Live. I'm Greg Gasavin here with Giancarlo Varanini and Ricardo Torres to talk about Soul Calibur II. We've ripped ourselves away from the Japanese versions of the game, which we just got in. We've been playing an awful lot of these games, all of them in turn. Good thing there's three of us and three versions of the game, and we've been unlocking weapons in the Weapon Master mode, playing with the exclusive characters, unlocking some of the hidden characters that aren't as well known as guys like Link and Spawn and Heihachi, and generally just getting some pretty good impressions of the final Japanese versions of the game. So we wanted to talk about some of the stuff that hasn't been covered quite as much, like how some of these exclusive characters actually play. The good news is they're not just all like Sophia model swaps or anything like that. There are actual new characters that have been put into the game, with the exception of Heihachi. So I guess everyone really wants to know how Link is. There's been some early footage of him, but now we've finally gotten a chance to play him. So is he as good as Wind Waker Link, or what? Are we happy with how Link turned out in Soul Calibur II?
I don't know. I think, just as a general comment, that I was pleasantly surprised to see how well the three characters have been integrated into the game. I mean, I would have thought that they would have been a little bit more out of place. In a certain sense, they still kind of are.
Yeah.
I mean, like Spawn and Link, they all have projectile attacks, which is
right.
In Soul Calibur, no one really did have projectile attacks. Namco has done a really good job of integrating those characters into the game. I mean, most of their moves are reasonable, just Soul Calibur type moves. None of them are totally over the top or anything.
Yeah, at a glance, I mean, they seem fairly well balanced. If anything, I was surprised that Heihachi seemed as strong as he seems, and other than that, like Spawn and Link both seem like they can hold their own. I'm actually pretty happy with how Link turned out, because he's really clearly based off of Ocarina of Time Link,
right.
So he looks just like the old character art that Nintendo released, and he's got all his moves. He's got his boomerang, and he's got his bombs. He's got his bow and arrow. He's got his Zelda 2 up thrust and down thrust and all that kind of stuff. So he
charges sword too.
Yeah, charges sword up. He's got his whirlwind attack. He's got his shield and everything. They definitely considering the inclusion of Link as just total fan service for fans of the Zelda games, they actually did a pretty good job. He doesn't really say anything, though. I guess he never spoke in the Zelda games.
Right.
He just kind of screams a lot. He sounds a little bit like Nightmare, and just like a Dragon Ball Z character or something, just doing an awful lot of yelling, but I guess it's
probably
kind of
for the best.
Yeah. Link breaking into soliloquy or anything like that. We will have none of that.
I don't think we're ready to hear Link threaten anybody's life in Japanese or English.
So what did you guys think of the different versions of the game? I have to say that if you just look at the three versions of the game side by side on kind of a normal TV, it's pretty hard to tell them apart, actually. They all look pretty darn good and run pretty smooth.
Color's really good across the board. Maybe GameCube and Xbox maybe have a touch clearer. Texture detail is probably a little higher and whatnot. And there's better color grading on them, I guess, because there's one or two areas in the PS2 where the rock textures are kind of washed out, but it's that's so nitpicky. But yeah, for the most part, that's pretty indistinguishable. And
there's progressive scan support for all three versions of the game.
Yeah, that's kind of where it gets a little hairy. Progressive scan 480p is cool in theory, but are y'all with me that up until now we really haven't seen a game that's done 480p and looks really nice? 480p kind of makes things a little jaggier and weirder.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly exposes any sort of minor visual flaws the game might have on a regular TV. Right. You're going to see them up front, but even with that, I mean, the game still looks really good, and I was really surprised to see that on all three platforms. It looks great. I mean, if you were to see all three running next to each other without knowing which system was playing, or if there weren't any of the exclusive characters on the screen, it would be pretty difficult to tell
Right.
which one was playing.
Yeah, in fact, the exclusive characters are the easiest way to tell the versions apart. Each version of the game has its own slightly different CG intro, which shows whatever character is exclusive to that system. And the exclusive characters are available from the get-go, along with Necrid, which is the character designed for all three of the versions, just for the home version of Soul Calibur II, designed by Todd McFarlane, who's also responsible for Spawn. And I don't know, Necrid seems kind of... Necrid does reuse some of the other characters' moves, and he, in my opinion, he looks kind of like a reject from the Masters of the Universe, but hey, Soul Calibur 2 could use a big guy with spikes and claws, right? So
yeah, I mean, it seems to me that he's sort of the Edge Master character, although not quite.
Well,
he has like a bunch of moves
Right.
from the other characters. I mean, last night I saw him, using some of Cervantes' moves, just using some of the Astaros moves. But he also has his like own set of moves as well. So it's not like just a complete, just like equivalent to a palette swap. And as far as the character design goes, yeah, I don't really think he fits all that well in. I mean, obviously, Soul Calibur's had things like Lizard Man. But still, he just seems kind of odd. He doesn't really seem to fit quite as well.
But hey, better more characters than less.
Yeah.
We noticed that on each of the version's character select screens, there are 5 empty spaces initially, and we've since filled out all of them by playing through the Weapon Master mode, which is pretty similar to the mission mode in Soul Calibur or the Edge Master mode in Soul Blade way back when. And basically you go through these mission-type battles where they might have weird conditions, like your character is constantly losing health or something like that. And as you beat the different missions, you unlock a lot of stuff. So some of the unlockable characters are just from previous... you'll remember them from Soul Calibur. So what's his face? Cervantes is in there. Some Mina's in there. Sophatia's in there.
Charade.
Charade is basically the Edge Master equivalent. He's a different character, every round. And there's some new outfits that can be unlocked. There's an outfit for Nightmare that makes him look like old Siegfried back in the day. So there seems to be a good amount of unlockable stuff, and you could also buy a lot of weapons for each character that have their own new properties and look different
And the new
stuff
modes.
like that. Yeah, and they're all the new modes and stuff too, like the extra arcade and extra versus mode. I think the big difference there is that you can use the unlocked weapons in them.
Did anybody else get kind of irked by the endings?
Yeah, the endings in the game are kind of, you could, to see the endings in Soul Calibur 2, just go to the Soul Calibur 2 website and look at all the art that Namco released months and months ago, because that's basically how the ending of each character in the game pans out. It's kind of, it is kind of disappointing considering, Tekken 4 had pretty good endings to it for each of the characters, and here you just get like a couple of sepia-toned drawings and there you go, roll credits, but I guess people don't play fighting games for their endings anymore.
The thing I think I'm probably most disappointed with, and this is going to sound really sort of stupid, is the fact that it just like, so many of the characters play exactly like they do in Soul Calibur, exactly like they did in Soul Blade.
Yeah, there was very much, I think, an attitude of if it ain't broke, don't fix it when designing Soul Calibur 2. The game's got a nice new coat of paint on it, but it doesn't play all that different. Very experienced Soul Calibur 2 players will tell you that the balance is quite a bit different, but if you're anything less than an ultra hardcore Soul Calibur player, you are going to immediately be able to pick this game up and do a lot of your old moves and have those be just as effective as ever. So.
I can't complain too much because Ivy's been seriously tricked out.
Yeah, Ivy is definitely one of the characters.
Yeah, I mean they have added a few new things, especially to Ivy, who seems to be probably one of the characters that benefited the most from Soul Calibur 2. But yeah, I mean it's just like with characters like Cervantes and stuff, I just find myself using the same exact combination.
Yeah, Cervantes is actually quite a bit weaker than he used to be.
I don't know about that.
I have to say, one thing that I was pleasantly surprised with was the fact that the game plays well on all three systems using their stock controllers. I confess I wasn't expecting much out of the GameCube controller for this game, but you use the D-pad and the 4 face buttons, and that's it, and it actually works surprisingly well. I got all my moves to come out pretty much, and considering that Soul Calibur II has mostly like linear motions for the moves and not a bunch of weird, pretzel shapes or quarter circles or anything like that, the directional pads for all three platforms seem to work pretty well for it.
Yeah, I was really happy because there's only arcade sticks out in Japan for the PS2 and the GameCube, and didn't seem like there were going to be any for the Xbox, so I was a little worried, but turned out to work just fine with the S or the original, actually, which is even better.
Yeah.
It took a little while to get used to the GameCube controller just because the button placement obviously is a little different from the other two or even from the Dreamcast Soul Calibur. So it did take a little while to adjust to that, but I mean once you after a few minutes it's pretty easy. It becomes second nature. Also, I mean I tend to find myself using the analog stick on the GameCube controller more than the D-pad just because
Really?
the D-pad is a little too small for me. So, but on the other controllers, yeah, I mean, the D-pads are fine.
But those are just our early impressions of Soul Calibur II, having been playing it feverishly for the past who knows how many hours. Needless to say, this is the sort of game that you could stick with for a long time, and we intend to log a lot more time with it and bring a lot more coverage of it in the weeks to come, leading up to its US release. So we're definitely, this is the sort of game that's right up our alley, so whatever kind of nitpicky issues we have with it are only because we love it. It's certainly a sequel we've been looking forward to for a long time, and the fact that it's similar to a game we like as much as we do certainly isn't that big of a problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Soul Calibur, then you're definitely going to dig Soul Calibur 2. I mean, just it's as simple as that. The graphics have been given a nice new shiny coat. The gameplay mechanics have been tweaked. The Weapon Master mode is really much more enjoyable than the equivalent mode found in Soul Calibur. So there's a lot of stuff there, and I'm really looking forward to the North American version myself.
Yeah, I think the timing couldn't be better because we haven't had a decent 3D fighter in a while. And if you're a GameCube owner, you haven't had one.
I got Mortal Kombat.
Like I said, you haven't had one.
Oh.
So, it's been... I mean, we're due for a really solid 3D fighter. It's a shame we have to wait till August. I mean, hopefully Namco will really throw in a whole ton of new stuff for us, but we'll see. It's a welcome addition to any of the platforms, that it's being brought to, and I think it's actually really cool that they've got multi-platform with it.
Yeah, and they've say what you will about the exclusive characters, but it's certainly an interesting approach, and even the box covers for the versions are different, and it's definitely helped give this game even more awareness lately, and it's if it's going to get more people thrilled about getting into fighting games again, that's cool. So thanks for joining us, and now if you'll excuse us, we have to get back to work here.